Happy Friday. I hope everyone's had a good week. And let's get into Monsters of God episode 2. And it's currently streaming on HBO. Unfortunately, this will be a weekly drop episode. It won't be a mass drop, which I'm really bummed because it's actually getting good. So the first episode I thought was good, but it had me intrigued. The second episode's definitely got my full attention because it's just a rabbit hole that they keep going down, and I really like how they outlined the series. So let's get into it. So Tommy Crutchfield and Hank Mole, they are no longer allowed to illegally transport animals and buy and sell and all those things. So to fill that vacuum, we end up following up with Ray Van Nostrand and Mario Tabrau. If you've ever heard of the Cocaine Cowboys, that's why his name sounds familiar. So Ray Van Nostrand was originally a pet store owner on the East Coast, where he lived with his wife Elaine and his three boys, who look like Elaine's genetics did zero work because all his sons look exactly alike. It is jarring. They automatically know what they're going to look like when they become elderly because they look just like their dad. So they eventually move to Florida for an opportunity to make more money. And there's a need for reptile dealers. So why not? So they get down there and they're instantly successful in making a good living. But like some people, unfortunately, and there's never enough money. And they end up linking together Mario and Ray, and what begins as just casual drug use for Ray, he ends up really getting into the lifestyle, especially of the 70s and 80s, the life of excess, the copious amounts of cocaine. And Mario is a drug dealer. So this was a match made in heaven. So you see a quick decline from being a family oriented man to being a man that liked to party and have a good time. His sons go into detail of waking up to strangers being in their home, sketchy people being scared for their lives. One son talked about the fear of someone doing something, so he had to carry around a weapon whenever his dad or anyone was there at their house from having a long bender. So eventually, like the story usually goes, the wife gets sick of it. Him and Elaine do end up getting divorced, but they don't go into detail of when they were divorced or when it was finalized or anything like that. But we do know that they're no longer together. And she does give an interview, and her new husband is actually makes just a very quick appearance in the series, just to kind of be protective. It was kind of sweet, kind of cute. He's just telling her, "Be careful what you say because I don't want you to get in trouble for it." So even her second husband makes a quick appearance in the series. So there is an DEA agent who has been trying to get his hands on Mario and his father, and he just cannot get that piece of evidence that is going to give them what they need. Larry Lovelace, he literally looks like like stereotypical television agent of some sort. Like his opening scene when they introduce him, he's hunting with his dogs and got on the gear and everything. So I chuckled at that because it really, it just all needs checks all the stereotypes of what you would think a agent would be like. Even his room is like lined up with like rifles and all that. So I was like, he definitely found his niche when he picked law enforcement for his career. So they've been investigating Mario for a long time, and they've been running surveillance, and his agents were specifically really sick of the smell of Mario's pet shop. He used the pet shop as his cover, and the odor supposedly coming from the facility was absolutely horrible. And then the agents got to hear every afternoon of his sexcapade. So Mario was a ladies' man, and he and his secretary had a standing 3 o'clock appointment, if you get what I mean. But she was not the only one. He was actually having relations with his fellow dealers and employees, their significant others. There's one gentleman that was talking about he found out his girlfriend was having sex with Mario. So everybody loved Mario, especially the ladies. Um, so they thought that they were going to get them at one point, and they had a undercover they had a mole that was running to do a deal with them. And I was like, if this is like the craziest like luck and criminality ever, they actually had him wired up, and then he got caught in a rainstorm, and it ended up messing up the reception, and the mole went missing. And come to find out, he was murdered and he was dismembered, and his body was destroyed by fire, and then he was never seen again. And Mario does confess to eventually to taking part in this murder um, down the road. And this is becomes Larry Lovelace's he's got a dog with a bone at this point. He is not giving up. He will arrest him, and he will see justice. And as the years go by, Ray is just getting worse and worse. And eventually he is in full blown addiction, and he is on the verge of losing everything. He's so in Mario and Ray are so entwined with one another. Eventually, Ray ends up actually starting to transport drugs in his vehicle. So the top what of the van had cocaine in it from what they said, and then the other parts of the van actually had reptiles in it. So that became their way of funneling the drugs, and that became their daily workflow. Well, eventually Lovelace finally gets Ray to talk to him, because originally Ray was like, I'm not snitching. I'm not going to have anything to do with you. But eventually he does, because eventually there's enough evidence against Ray, because he has also starting to not just traffic animals or reptiles. His new thing now is trafficking weapons, and he gets caught, and then eventually he does eventually turn, and he gives enough evidence to get Mario convicted on a ton of RICO violations. And then we find out Mario's first wife was murdered, and she was shot with a gun that had a silencer that was purchased by Mario from Ray. We never know who the actual gunman was, because I guess evidence shows that Mario is not the actual shooter. But I mean, by process of elimination, I mean, it's safe to assume we know who would be responsible for her death. He says he did not do it, he did not have anything to do with it. Mario actually has a very fascinating beginning of life, because he is immigrated to the United States from Cuba during a very turbulent time. His dad and all of his family were actually caught up in the whole Bay of Pigs um, conflict. So that was a very interesting part. And I wonder, as far as like his psyche and like his survival skills, how much of that is has to do with how he acts and his personality. And spoiler, we actually do get an interview with Mario, because he is no longer in prison. So he was originally sentenced to be in prison for a very long time, like not life, but the equivalent of your life. And he was released after 12 years, and we have no idea how that possibly happened or how that could have happened. But he is out in the world, and he gave an interview, and he was talking about how much he trusts animals more than he does humans, because humans will turn their back on you at any time. An animal may take a piece of your skin away, but a human will just backstab you anytime that they can or if they have to. So that was a really fascinating interview. He does not present how I thought he would be, if that makes sense. I don't know, like he's very mellow, very chill, very calm. I mean, for somebody to go and help burn dismember a body, I would think that you'd be more high strung, but he did get into during that period in his life, he was using a lot of drugs, and he was very paranoid. So I was like, okay, that tracks. That makes sense. So we find out he ended up actually getting into the drug trade. That wasn't like his like normal course of life, like a family business or anything. He owned a jewelry store, and he eventually started working with the drug dealers with a marijuana business, and it eventually turned into a cocaine business. And he quickly worked his way up the ranks and became a very successful drug dealer and was very, very wealthy by all accounts. His home was very Scarface like, and there were tons of pets, tons of animals, because he loves animals. And when I say that, I really believe this man. He may be willing to kill a human, but he loves animals. There are animals everywhere. There's a story about a monkey and cocaine and him running, scurrying off with it. They said there was so much cocaine on the floors, you probably could scoop it up and get a kilo. So that made me chuckle. So he was very successful before he went away to prison. Like I said, he got out in 12 years, and he himself says, "I cannot disclose how I got out in 12 years, so we'll never know." Loveless, the DEA agent, says, "I don't understand how he worked out that miracle." And he also warned the film crew before they went to interview Mario, "Watch your back, don't mess with him, don't let him fool you, because he will kill you. Do not get caught up in the web." So he did leave with that warning. And then Ray did have to serve some time in prison. And when he got out, he lost everything. He had lost his family, his home, and everything. And eventually, his son comes up with the idea of, "Do you think that we could do this?" And he says, "I think we can." So next week's episode is going to go into his son Mike taking over and getting into the reptilian dealer business. And I'm interested to see, because it's very foreshadowing that like it doesn't go as well as it should have, and definitely some sketchy things are going to happen. Sidebar, I also wanted to discuss the animals that they trafficked into the United States, like the illegal ones. So there was a snake, and I'll show the side by side of them. But it was so fascinating. They showed a side by side of how they were smuggling in some illegal animals. So they wanted a Komodo dragon, which is absolutely illegal to smuggle into the country. I wouldn't want to have to touch a Komodo dragon, let alone try to figure out how to smuggle one. But they found, or there's a certain breed of lizard that is very similar to a baby Komodo dragon. And if they're in a like suitcase or some type of container full of them, you wouldn't be able to differentiate the two if you had just the normal eye. So they really worked out some innovative ways to sneak these animals into the country. So I can't wait till they talk about that a little bit more as well. But please go and watch Monsters of God, because I am not a reptilian person at all. And I am like, I'm not squeamish of snakes. I never am going to wake up and be like, "Oh, I want a pet snake." But this was really good. And I love how it's like tying everything together. I'm waiting to see how we get further into the Anson Wong part of it, because he has been covered in every episode, and he sounds like or not sounds like, he was the man at one point of all illegal animal trafficking. If you couldn't get your hands on it, this was the guy to go to. So I am fascinated to see how that plays out. But please go watch. It drops every Thursday night, and it's on HBO. Bye.